Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Secretary of Shade is DDM here. As promised, we are back for night 2, part 2 of our deep dive and reading of Kamala Harris's 107 days. Now, for those of you just joining the channel, you just started watching, make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/Secretary of Shade. Also, you can donate to the channel via Super Chat or via Cash App or Venmo at Dapper Dan Midas to keep this thing going. Yesterday, we read select chapters from 107 Days. We looked into Kamala and her husband's relationship with the Bidens, as well as who she really wanted to run with her in her campaign, which was Pete Buttigieg, which was such a missed opportunity. Tonight, we are going to read how the hell she chose Tim Walz. Now, me personally, I wasn't mad at the Tim Walz selection. I just wasn't. Oh wow, I'm getting breaking news. They just indicted Jim Comey. Okay. We're gonna stay on track. That's mind blowing. But tonight we're going to look into how she chose Tim Walz, which was quite an interesting pairing, to say the least. Like I said, I thought it was appropriate, and I didn't see anything wrong with it. But this is just, and I'm going to read this and then we're going to get into reading. So former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted. This is breaking news by a federal grand jury. Comey, a longtime adversary of Donald Trump, is now the first senior government official to face federal charges in one of Trump's largest grievances, the 2016 investigation into whether his first presidential campaign colluded with Russia. He has been charged with giving false statements and obstruction of a congressional proceeding, the Justice Department said in a statement. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in a post on X, "No one is above the law." Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We will follow the facts in this case. Now, we know Pam Bondi is getting a lot of pressure from Trump with the whole situation with Letitia James, basically the attorney general, the prosecutor, basically saying, hey, we can't find nothing. The lady didn't do anything. So he was forced to resign. Now James Comey is up. This is just very dangerous territory. And, Pam Bondi is just grasping at straws because she's not in the best of lights with President Trump herself. So this is a lot, but we're going to stay on course. But that is breaking news. Pam Bondi, Attorney General James Comey, has been indicted, for giving false statements about Trump colluding with Russia, which, quite frankly, the evidence for that is very damning. We see it every day. But I digress. We're going to get back into why we're here, which is this book. So we're going to talk about, we're going to be reading about how Kamala selected Tim Walz as her running mate, and get into that. So this is 95 days to the election. That Friday morning, the VP selection committee received final vetting memos on the 3 candidates we narrowed down as finalists. The committee would be going through the memos to make sure there were no last minute surprises before we called them in for face-to-face meetings over the weekend. The residence was staked out by the press, and the media chatter was all about when I'd be interviewing. It felt like we were holding a papal conclave in the residence, and the press outside were waiting for the white smoke. Getting those candidates in and out discreetly without exposing them to a barrage was going to take some cloak and dagger shenanigans. I need to make a decision by Monday at the latest, since we'd announced that I'd appear with my chosen running mate Tuesday night in Philadelphia. The announcement location had been picked well in advance simply because Pennsylvania was the most critical swing state with 19 electoral votes. Secrecy around the interviews was important. It built excitement and the momentum for the campaign. I plan to announce my decision by video, text, and email to supporters just before the Philly rally. The shortlist had been closely held. It was no secret that even my personal schedule identified the finalists only as candidate 1 and 2 and 3. But media were reporting that some on the longer list who'd been considered earlier had cleared their schedules, canceling events in case they got the call to meet with me that weekend. Some big egos were about to take a bruising, and these were important people with vital work to do. It was wrong to keep them in the dark. We decided to let CNN know that the 3 finalists were Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro, and Tim Walz. Trump, of course, immediately took the most divisive tack he could think of, musing publicly that Josh Shapiro's Jewish identity would cost me the votes of Arab Americans. It was a typical dog whistle, except that now the frequency was audible to more than his Charlottesville Tiki Torch acolytes. The timing of my running mate announcement had been driven by the virtual roll call of Democratic convention delegates that had started the night before. I couldn't announce a running mate until I officially held the nomination. There was zero suspense about that, since mine was the only name on the ballot. Because of our superhuman effort on the day Joe dropped out, we made it clear that I had the support needed, and no other candidate competed to get the 300 signatures required by party rules to challenge me. Now, this is where I'm going to pause, bitch. This is where I'm going to pause. Because, see, y'all should have had a primary election before all of this. Of course, there's not going to be enough signatures, bitch. The election, this is August the 2nd. The election is November the 5th. August to September. September to October. October to November. Who the fuck is going to get a campaign together in 3 goddamn months? Seriously. Who's doing that? So this was a far. Now, you know, I am a registered Democrat, but we're going to call a spade, bitch. Who the fuck can get a campaign together this quick and not be in this? Like that's crazy. Now, there were candidates who did want to run back when it was a primary time where they should have had a primary election and cycle with Dean Phillips and a few other guys, but they played with him. So, of course, so this was, to be quite frank, there was no other choice, bitch. So let's call a spade and not act stupid like we don't know what the hell was going on. But nevertheless, the balloting was open till Monday evening, but word came through about 1 p.m. Friday from the party chair reporting that I crossed the threshold in the vote tally, making me the nominee. I digress. So now we're going to jump to August the 4th. Now, mind you, this was on August the 2nd. She was still figuring it out. August the 4th, 93 days to the election. We're going to look into how she actually chose Tim Walz. Some of these interviews was very busy, which you're about to find out. Some of these men had big egos. Her running mate should have been Pete Buttigieg, like she wanted. But also, like I said yesterday, half of the country didn't vote for her anyway. Even more people probably wouldn't have voted for her if she had an openly gay man running with her. Let's just be real here, okay? So, August 4th, 93 days to the election. The pack of reporters staking out the gate to the Naval Observatory that Sunday had no idea that Storm had secretly arranged to come and go through an alternate entrance that hadn't been used for about 20 years. Inside, I would be making one of the most difficult decisions of my life against a background of international tension. On July 31st, Israel had pulled off the audacious assassination of Hamas's political leader right in the heart of Tehran, at the guest house of the Revolutionary Guard, no less. We expected Iran to respond. The question was how, when, and with what consequences. There's campaigning, and then there's governing. That weekend, I would have to divide my focus between my role as a candidate for president and my most solemn duty as sitting vice president to help protect our nation's security. We had decided to hold a pre-brief before each interview and a debrief after. I knew all three men. We'd worked together, but this encounter was going to be very different. Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, arrived first. Storm had picked him up from the parking lot of an elementary school in Glover Park. At the last minute, Storm had traded her Jeep for a vehicle with tinted windows since discretion in this process was so important to us. Josh went to get in the front seat, but Storm instructed that he needed to be in the back so he could duck and not be seen. She thought he seemed a little disappointed by that. When he learned she was the residence manager, he peppered her with questions about the house, from the number of bedrooms to how he might arrange to get Pennsylvania artists work on loan from the Smithsonian. So hold up, bitch. So he just automatically thought he was getting a job, bitch. He didn't. Josh Shapiro was like, oh yeah, bitch, I'm hired. I got this. I'm hired. So Josh Shapiro ain't even did the interview. He on the way to the interview, bitch. Now, I understand speaking things into existence. I get that. I'm all about speaking shit into existence. But this motherfucker ain't even did the interview yet. And he talking about what paintings he gonna get from the Smithsonian, what artists from Pennsylvania he gonna have hanging up on the walls. Bitch, you ain't even talked to the lady yet. In our meeting, he was, as always, poised, polished, and personable. I told him how much I admired his work. He was great on the stump, a wonderful campaigner, very compelling, and very bright. Our careers synced in many places. While employed as a political advisor on Capitol Hill, he took night classes to get his law degree at Georgetown and then ran for the Pennsylvania State House. He had been twice elected state attorney general. I had a chance to see how his mind worked when we were both Rodell Fellows at the Aspen Institute in 2006, when he was a member of the Pennsylvania State House and I was San Francisco District Attorney. That 2-year bipartisan program for young elected leaders included seminars on the founding documents of democracy and ethics, as well as international trips exploring global issues. So let's pause here. The interesting thing is, it's just like in corporate America, and it's the same thing in government, in federal government, and national government, and the presidency. They identify who they want to run the country early. They put them through these programs, as you can see. Like, how the fuck, you live in San Francisco, bitch. He in Pennsylvania, y'all in these Rodell, whatever they call scholarship programs, learning each other. And both of y'all one of you end up helping run the country, and one of you is the governor of Pennsylvania. So this shit is a network, bitch. This is a network. Josh had been elected governor in 2022 and was popular in a state with 19 electoral votes that we badly needed to win. We talked about how to handle the attacks he confronted on Gaza and what effect it might have on the enthusiasm we were trying to build. Big protests at the convention were a major concern. As a student, he'd written an op-ed stating that peace with Palestinians was impossible, and this decades-old article had been dragged out to smear him as Genocide Josh. He said he felt he'd been able to deal with the critics by stating clearly that his youthful opinion had been misguided and that he was fully committed to a two-state solution. He had also publicly called Netanyahu one of the worst leaders of all time. And he wasn't lying, bitch. He wasn't lying. Where's the lie? Where's the lie? He wasn't lying. I asked him if he understood the job of vice president, because if you do, you'll be good at it and our administration will be strong. He peppered me with questions trying to nail down in detail what role I saw for my VP. At one point, he mused that he would want to be in the room for every decision. I told him bluntly that was an unrealistic expectation. A vice president is not a co-president, bitch. Come the fuck through, Calm. Come through, because she said, hold the fuck up, bitch. Vice, not co. I'm not the one or the two, bitch. Stay in your place. I had a nagging concern that he would be unable to settle for a role as number two and that it would weigh on our partnership. I had to be able to completely trust the person in that role. Every day as president, I said, I'll have 99 problems and my VP can't be one. Bitch. But she ain't lying, no, bitch. She ain't lying. It's Beyonce and it's Kelly, bitch. Both of us can't have the good outfit. Okay? Both of us can't. Tina and Uncle Johnny they only got rhinestones for one of the looks, bitch. And you can't have the rhinestones, bitch. So he already out the running at this point. Apart from apprehensions for myself, I was also concerned for him. I thought his frustrations with the job might impact his performance in the role. And why take an effective Democratic governor out of a job he liked and was good at? But could I afford to turn my back on such a talented political athlete in such a critical state? Josh assured me he'd do everything to help me win Pennsylvania, whether I chose him or not, because this is the most important election we face. No shade. I had time to hash out these thoughts in a debrief with my team. Meanwhile, Storm returned Josh to the pickup location. Storm instructed the state trooper who was arranging transport, on an alternate route that would avoid driving by the vice president's residence on Massachusetts Avenue. She assumed that the press would notice official vehicles with Pennsylvania plates. She was disappointed 10 minutes later to see those very cars on CNN cruising right by the residence. That lack of discretion did not play well with her. She picked up Minnesota, so all right, contestant number one, Josh Shapiro, we see what he gave, bitch. He wants to be all in the videos, all on the record. He want to be on Bad Boy Records. So now contestant number 10, Tim Walz. She picked up Minnesota Governor Tim Walz from a nearby dog park. He was amused by the cloak and dagger shenanigans. On a drive, they talked about her Norwegian background. His state has a large Norwegian community. And when he arrived, he seemed touched that Storm had his preferred beverage, Diet Mountain Dew, on the table ready for him. It was quickly clear to me that Tim had walked into that room feeling he wouldn't get the job. The first thing he said as he sat down, I don't even know if the door had closed behind him, was, whether or not you pick me, I'm going to do everything I can to get you elected. He was immediately self-critical. I'm not a good debater. I've never used a teleprompter. He was less polished than Josh, but he had an appealing authenticity and was genuinely self-deprecating. A lot of people in politics act self-deprecating, but it's just that, an act. If anything, Tim over-indexed his own liabilities. On the face of it, we had nothing in common. I'm West Coast. He's Midwest. I was born in Oakland and grew up in a working-class urban neighborhood. He's from a rural town of 400 on the Nebraska plains. I worked at McDonald's in the summer. He worked on his family's farm. Despite those differences, Tim reminded me of everyone I grew up with. He was plain-spoken, hard-working, strong, kind, and a fighter for what he believes is right. And he had a sense of humor. Now, I'm going to pause here because this is important to look at. Kamala, if we think about the campaign, let's think back. The critique of her was always that she's so rehearsed. She's so buttoned up. Nothing seems authentic or off the cuff. So now you have a man walking in, and that was one of Tim Walz's assets, if we recall back to the campaign, was that he seemed like the everyday man. He was relatable, and he ain't lie. Bitch, he was not a good debater. He ain't lie about that. He was on point. Never mind the teleprompter. Here was a guy who knew how to put an engine together. A guy who could talk knowledgeably to a farmer about hogs and soybeans. A guy who knew what it meant to hunt in fall to put food in the freezer to last through winter. None of it was shtick. It was just who he is. He would make the case for the people who were not in the room. Even more valuable, Tim would notice who was not in the room and know how to reach them. Of the three candidates, this quality was authentic and unique to him. As a farmer, factory worker, Army National Guardsman, social studies teacher, football coach, and Democrat who had beaten a six-term Republican to win a congressional seat in 2006 and hold it through 5 elections, Tim had the most diverse life experience. He and his wife, Gwen, had struggled with infertility and had their daughter, Hope, through IVF. Because I'm not pronouncing all that. Their son, Gus, still in high school, had special needs. Remember him on the rally? Tim had the empathy that came from living those experiences. He knew what it meant to suffer as much as he knew what it meant to succeed. His record as a 2-term governor was impressive. He pushed for and signed legislation codifying reproductive rights, providing free school meals, making college tuition free for low-income families, and requiring universal background checks for gun buyers. Under his leadership, his state was designated one of the most business-friendly in the nation. These were issues that mattered to me. They were the kinds of achievements I wanted for my administration. I felt like Tim knew how to help me get them done. Let's pause here. When you run down, now we did this yesterday. We ran down Pete Buttigieg's resume. Now we're running down Tim Walz. America, you fumbled the fucking bag so hard. So hard. When we look at everything that Tim Walz accomplished in his state, in his career, can you imagine what your kids wouldn't have measles? Wouldn't be no measles outbreak in Texas. Bitches wouldn't be riding across the state lines to get IVF and have abortions. Your kids wouldn't be hungry. Your health care wouldn't be gone. Dropped the fucking ball. He said he had no ambition to be president, that his aim as vice president would be doing meaningful work to improve people's lives. It's no bad thing for a vice president to want to be president unless that ambition plays a corrosive role in a relationship and causes disloyalty. That wouldn't be an issue with him. He had no fixed ideas about what the role of vice president should be, saying he would do whatever I found was most useful for him to do. That's how he won. That's how he won. That's how he got it over. Oh, and you're right, Karen. The farmers wouldn't be struggling because he's from a farm town. He knows what you need. He knows what you need. Dumbasses. Finally, so that's contestant number 2. Now we're going to get to contestant number 3, bitch. Finally, Storm set off to collect Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona. As she drove up to the agreed meeting point, he texted her, "I'm in a Tesla by the dumpsters." For an astronaut who had walked in space, it was a very down-to-earth location for a rendezvous. By the time I sat down with Kelly, Shapiro and Walls had both impressed me in completely different ways. There was very little weight on the scale favoring one over the other. Bitch, you lying. You know you liked him. The choice between them was tough enough. Now, an American hero had entered the room. A Navy baseball cap paired handsomely with his business suit. Kelly served 24 years in the U.S. Navy, retiring as a highly decorated captain with over 5,000 flying hours and 39 combat missions. He and his twin brother, both astronauts, have dedicated their lives to our country in the most notable way. Scott Kelly spent almost a year in space to study the effects of long-duration space travel on the human body. Because they are identical twins, retired astronaut Mark sat down here on the Earth while Scott was in space was the perfect control subject. Mark Kelly had also been put to the test by personal tragedy when his wife, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, was shot in the head in an assassination attempt. Oh, bitch, I didn't know that was his wife. I didn't know that was his wife, bitch. Okay. I had watched as he stood behind her every step of her long, difficult recovery and fought tirelessly for sensible gun reform. We'd worked together on that issue in the Senate. They had both been supportive friends ever since I was AG. Since I was also in charge of overseeing the National Space Council, I sought Mark's opinion on how to maintain a thriving aerospace industry for civilian and military ends. He advised me on one of my proudest achievements, the Artemis Accords, which provide a forward-looking set of international principles for how humanity uses the resources of space, the moon, and Mars. One of its most immediate concerns is creating a legal framework for how we deal with ever-proliferating space junk, as the number of satellites increase and older ones decay and fall to Earth. When I took up my role as the Space Council, only 9 nations had signed on to the accords. After my meetings with Narendra Modi, Emmanuel Macron, that's my bitch, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, and many other world leaders, it's now 55. So Kamala got the council from 9 to 55, bitch, and you telling this lady she not fucking qualified. And Emmanuel Macron is my bitch. That's my bitch. I fucks with him. True T. I was impressed that Mark had won his Senate seat in a traditionally red state, helping to turn it purple. He was pro-business in a way that mattered to me and could be helpful in countering the Republican narrative that I wasn't. As a senator for a border state, he broken with our party's preferred language on migration, calling the situation a crisis. I agreed with that characterization and had argued that the White House should also use that word. Irregular migration was a crisis, a global one, to which we, America, always a beacon for the poor and the threatened, could not be and were not immune. Politically, I rarely emphasize that point because it could be mischaracterized as a lame excuse. But Mark's slowness to sign on to the PRO Act, protecting unions' right to organize, had raised the red flag. He had come out in full-throated support as recently as July 24th, aware maybe that I will only choose a running mate who was unquestionably pro-labor. I admired Mark Kelly. He would be magnetic. So let's pause here. For those of you who watch The Gilded Age, he's basically railroad daddy, bitch. Nice guy, but he ain't trying to pay people what they supposed to be paid. He's not pro-union. Very railroad daddy, very, Mr. Russell and that whole thing if you watch Gilded Age. If you don't watch Gilded Age, you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But for my Gilded crew, that's basically Mark Kelly is giving railroad daddy tease. As I sat across from him, what I saw was our American ideal of selfless service, untarnished. He also hadn't yet had an oh shit moment in his relatively short political career. I wasn't sure how he would cope with that kind of garbage Trump would throw at him. Could a captain, used to deference and respect, adapt to an opponent's national campaign specifically designed to disrespect him, to cut a hero down to something small? John Kerry, a war hero, had been swift-boated, defamed in an untrue campaign about his military record that had unfairly damaged his reputation. The guy who led that effort, Chris LaCivita, was now one of Trump's top campaign aides. I realized that I couldn't afford to test Mark Kelly in that ugly grinder. See, this is what I'm talking about. We worried about her laugh and shit. This bitch knows she got the juice. She know what's going on. She already knew who was what, who was where. She like, oh, I found the chink. I found the chink. When Kelly left, I got on a Zoom call with the selection committee and my chosen committee of advisors, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, former Congressman Cedric Richmond, and Tony West. We reviewed what we'd heard from each of these exceptional men and weighed the pros and cons. Their concerns were how adeptly and passionately each of them would defend me. In short, who would be most loyal and effective at the job? The ambition must be for the job, not for the political future beyond. So we already know that Shapiro, you out, bitch. To get a young person's opinion, I called my godson, Alexander Hudlin, 17 years old and very much a creature of the zeitgeist. He was for Walls. Auntie, I like him. My senior staff to a person strongly favored him. A confidential group within the campaign had already mocked up announcements pumping whichever of the three I chose, ready to press send once my decision could be announced. This helped me envision a narrative of our ticket. It was late when I finally sat down in the family room. Maya and Tony were staying with us. They both liked Walls. Maya especially liked the fact that he was not trying to be anything but the best VP for her sister. He's loyal. He'll have your back on the trail, and it's clear that you like him, she said. Doug and I went back and forth. He had known Josh longer and leaned that way. It was always going to have to be my decision. I told my staff and family that I didn't want any more input, and I went to do something practical. I made a tasty rub and seasoned a pork roast. By the time I went to bed, I decided on Walls. So, that's how she decided on Tim Walz. And let's think about this from a cultural standpoint. She decided on Tim Walz like most black people did. Notice Doug wanted Josh Shapiro, and maybe in hindsight that may have been the better choice. But she listened to her sister. She listened to the children. And then she listened to herself as she cooked. And my mother, God rest her soul, cooking was my mother's therapy. That's when she did a lot of her thinking. And, you know, I think black people are not a monolith. And the black experience in America is not a monolith. And I think in reading this book, a lot of us have more in common with her than what we wanted to admit or what we even knew. Reading this book, yes, Kamala is a former attorney general, former vice president. Yes, she is an educated woman, HBCU and all of those things. But so much of who she is so familiar as a person. And I think a lot of people, both on the left and the right, got so caught up in, is she black? Is she black enough? She's not this. And blackness is not a monolith. And we've got to get out of this. And this is something that as black people, we have to really understand and move past, is that black people, every black person is not going to be the same. When we look at, like, there's certain acceptable blackness or the poster child of what blackness is supposed to be. And by acting like that and feeding into that narrative, we really prevent ourselves from true liberation. Black is a feeling, it is culture, but it's the skin color as well. It's not the total sum of who a person is. And we have to allow ourselves the space the agency and the freedom to be who we are without having to live up to an expectation of what we think Black is supposed to be. And reading this book, I just see so, like, when we look at the resumes of the people who she was seriously considering as her VP, these people were super qualified. These people had a true understanding of what it would take to take America into this next century and really continue and push to become this beacon of innovation and forward and upward progress. And instead, Americans chose to feed into their prejudice, and they chose to want to live in a draconian society because it's comfortable. And now look at what we have. All three of those candidates were good candidates for VP. I understand why she chose Tim Walz. I understand why she didn't even have Pete Buttigieg in the top 3. But all of those people, can you honestly look me straight in the face and say that J.D. Vance was a better option than these 4 people? Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro, Tim Walz, and Pete Buttigieg? Are you really going to tell me? Are you really going to tell me that this person was a better choice than all of these super... Mark Kelly was a fucking astronaut, yo. Tim Walz beat Republicans, a 6-time Republican winner incumbent. Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania. Pete Buttigieg, decorated with colors, fantastic transportation secretary. Like, let's be for real. But we were worried about, or some were worried about, her laugh. I don't like her laugh. She doesn't give me the idea of what I think Blackness should be. Every Black woman is not going to be Michelle Obama. Every Black woman is not going to be Claire Huxtable. Every Black woman is not going to be Sheila Jackson Lee. Every Black woman is not going to be Maxine Waters. And that's just the reality. Thank you for the super chat, Gita. I appreciate it, honey. And it's always nice to see you. So we have to think about that. And reading this book is what could have been. This is this book. No shade. And for the person that came in and said she locked up Black boys, okay, you didn't read the whole record. And here's my thing, because I have a whole, if you go back, because I'm not going to relitigate that case, because I have relitigated that case for Kamala on this channel. Feel free to go and look back. I have a whole video on it. One thing we have to realize, that when people are attorneys, they have a job to do. And sometimes it's not always favorable to the people that you would like it to be favorable to. And sometimes, and this is something we have to understand, sometimes people deserve to get locked the fuck up. Everybody is not innocent. There are a lot of people who are innocent. But everybody is not innocent. Because while you're screaming free man, when he shoots up your fucking party or somebody's child loses their life, what do you say to that family? You also didn't mention the programs that she helped facilitate to have those same Black men that got locked the fuck up because they should have got locked the fuck up. A path for them to not get locked the fuck up again and be able to be productive citizens in society. A program to keep them from getting back in jail. You left that part the fuck out. Sorry if you meant that as a lie. My bad. My bad. Sorry. Sorry. But I'm just saying that stuff triggers me because we sat and we do all of this. Thank you, Demetrius, for the super chat. I appreciate it. You can donate to the channel. Super chat, Cash App, Venmo, Dapper Damitis. But this is the stuff that really bothers me because you held this woman to this impossible standard. This impossible standard, yet look at what you have. Look at what you have now. You have a president that can't even pronounce acetaminophen. You have a president going after his political rivals. You have a fucking alcoholic as the Secretary of Defense calling emergency meetings that don't nobody know what the meeting is for. You have an attorney general that's just locking people up because she got in trouble because the person that actually knew how to do their goddamn job said, bitch, you have no case. You have an administration that had alligator Alcatraz selling merch, and now the shit is closed because it was a goddamn safety hazard. You have a Homeland Secretary who is more concerned with taking pictures with men locked up in what is essentially the equivalent of slave ship bows and locking up hairstylists because they got the wrong tattoo. This is what you have. So don't tell me what Kamala wasn't qualified for. Don't tell me what none of these people were not qualified for. Because as far as I'm concerned, you're full of shit. And then you have people missing from alligator Alcatraz, just gone. Y'all were so hard on this woman. And look at what you have. Because remember, both candidates are the same. Both candidates are the same. You have people being disappeared on the streets. And she said all of this during the campaign. But ultimately, you get what you deserve. You get what you voted for. Everybody that stood on the sidelines and you were supposed to fight for your country and you didn't. You didn't. You didn't. So you get the day you deserve. Now, I want everybody to have a great weekend. I need you to leave comments if you want to read on Sunday evening at 7:15 because Friday is a no-go. Absolutely not. Saturday, you're trying it. Sunday, if y'all want to read again, leave a comment. Make sure you hit them likes up. Remember, you can donate via Super Chat or Cash App or Venmo at Dapper Damitis to keep this thing going. But I hope you all have a great, great, great weekend. I have to join a wrestling podcast that I love in 30 minutes. So I need a break because it's a lot of talking. But if you want to read Sunday, go ahead and put it up. We'll meet Sunday at 7:15. I'm seeing the comments. Okay, it's giving what it needs to give. So we'll do Sunday. At 7:15, I'll put the announcement up and I will see y'all then. Until then, have a great weekend. Peace and love. Sign off.